Hey everybody, today is Monday, June 1st, 2026. This is episode 101, and I'm continuing on the series talking about what I do as a real estate pro. So for those that don't know, my name is Luther Wilson III, and I'm here in the Kansas City market representing for Upside Property Services, Upside Capital, and the affiliate companies. I'm a real estate investor, real estate broker, loan broker as well. And most everything that we do is investment properties, okay? So over the last couple of years, been doing videos talking about the capital, the strategy, and the operations. And more so recently, I wanted to dig in a bit, talking more about what I do in particular, okay? Some of the day-to-day, week-to-week stuff. And this is part 3 of the series, what I do as a real estate pro. So just to recap real quick, on the last video, I wrapped up kind of talking about how I've been able to produce leads and how I process those leads, okay? So I work with a group. There's multiple service providers that I have close ties with and work directly with, depending on what my investor may need, okay? So, of course, YouTube, social media has been a great way to get the message out, to promote our services and our companies. And of course, there's other ways that I've done marketing, and I talked about that on the first video as well. But I want to recap real quick. When I get a lead, however it comes in, okay, depending on what that individual or what that group may need, okay, it helps me determine how I'm going to process it, okay? So an investor comes along, they, more often than not, are looking to either resell a property, they're looking to purchase a property, okay, or they may need funding and financing, okay? That is most of the leads that come through. Occasionally, I'll get a lead that needs a contractor, or they need a rehab crew for a project. And then on occasion, I may get a lead that needs a property manager, okay? So, the main people that I work with, my mom is an agent. I refer her leads, or have referred her leads quite often over the last handful of years. I mentioned my mortgage broker, okay? That is a key thing for real estate investors. And then I mentioned my property manager, and she also has assisted with quite a few rehab projects too. So those usually are my go-to people. And then of course, I forgot to mention, I work closely with a private money lender too, okay? So lead comes in based on what they need, what they're looking to do. I am gonna get them connected with one of those individuals that I mentioned, okay? I'm gonna get them plugged in with one of the agents. I may need to get them plugged in with the mortgage broker. I may need to get them, again, plugged in with the contractor or the property manager, or I may try to get them plugged in with my private money lender. And of course, there are more than one there's more than one private money lender that I can work with and have worked with, okay? However, if I'm going to take someone on directly, right, how does that look? That's what I want to get into next. And there is a chance that I may not be able to cover all of it in today's session. So I may end up doing a part 4. We'll just kind of see what happens over these next few minutes, right? Because try to keep these somewhat short, right? Digestible, okay? And then moving on to the next thing, right? So if I am going to take on a client, okay, it's usually going to be either me helping them to sell a property on seller financing. So that's one thing. It could be me representing them to, help them find their next property, to purchase a property, right? Or It could be me taking them on as a business partner. In our case, when I take on a business partner, we go in together, in business together, and the plan is for us to acquire investment properties. So I bring those three up because in those situations, I'm not necessarily dishing them off to one of my teammates or another service provider, but I'm going to get some type of agreement together with that individual, with that couple, or with that company or group, right? So the first one I mentioned is if I'm going to help a seller do seller financing, okay? So that was a way for us to do quite a bit of volume between 2020 through 2024, 25. We were really busy between 2021 and 2023. Since then, it's kind of slowed up. But again, if I'm going to help someone with seller financing, a lot of that, right, has been me assisting the seller, okay? And a lot of them, almost basically all of them, are investors who, instead of selling the property outright, okay, on market or off market, okay, instead of them renting the property out, they commission me and my team, right, to help them sell the property via seller financing. And I'm going to get an agreement with them in place that I sign and the seller signs. Okay, so part of me being a licensed real estate broker, there are certain things that I have to do as a fiduciary, as a licensed real estate broker, to protect the interest of the public, my client, and then also to make sure that I'm compliant with the rules and regulations for being a licensee, right? So that agreement is important for me, not just so I'm following the rules and so I don't get caught up later on down the road, but the important thing, another important thing about the agreement is it lets me know that my client is serious. It's more than just a handshake. It's more than just a verbal thing. It's a commitment, and it does something more psychologically. I think it does a lot more, okay? Because I've done it in the past. A lot of real estate, professionals can get into deals, or they're helping someone out, however that looks. And a lot of times it's a handshake. Well, I don't really do that anymore. It's one thing if I'm just kind of consulting with them or I'm getting them connected with someone else. But if I'm truly going to commit to helping them, if I'm going to agree to serve them, right, we're going to lay out some of the terms. It doesn't have to be a very long agreement, especially for the seller finance agreement. It's 2 pages, the agreement that I use. And it lets me know that they're serious about working with me, and then we can proceed from there, okay? And then I go through the process of marketing that property via seller financing, right? I have to come up with a price and the terms that we're going to use to market the property. So I'm going to need to get with the seller, and I'm going to send them a sample or 2, maybe more, saying, hey, and I walk the property. If there aren't pictures, then I'm going to get pictures. A lot of times the sellers have been trying to sell it or rent it, so they a lot of times have professional photos, which is great. But even then, if I haven't received pictures from them, I'm going to get into that property to make sure that I can market it effectively based on the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, if it has a basement, if it has a garage, what's going on with the property. Are the utilities on? Okay. And then I can get a feel for the home and I can get a feel for what's happening on that street. Okay, and I can definitely get a feel for what's going on in that area, in that neighborhood. That's part of me really being able to, market the property more effectively. And I enjoy this process. I get a kick out of it. And the last handful of times I've done that, I will also do a Facebook Live video of me out in the front yard or in front of the property saying, hey, I'm at such and such address. Here's the scoop. The house was built in such and such. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath with a full unfinished basement, whatever the case may be. And then I will go through I will state the price and the terms that we're asking. And that has been a great way to market the property. And it's been quite enjoyable too. And so that's part of the process that I go through if I'm going to help a seller. Okay, as I said before, a lot of times it's investors who are tired landlords, or they're looking for an alternate way to create revenue or profits or cash flow from their investment. Okay, the last few years, interest rates have been higher than they were. Okay, also recently, inflation has affected how we can do business, the cost of living, along with the labor and the material. And real estate's still pretty sexy, it's still popular, not just among investors, but still everyday home buyers want to get into a home. So it's still rather competitive. And so, I say all that to say, like, investors have needed to get more creative to get the margins or the returns or the cash flow that they maybe were able to get before, and they realize, like, hey, seller financing is a good move. Okay, so that's a big thing that I do as a real estate pro. If I'm going to assist or represent someone who wants to do seller financing, they want me and my team to help them sell that property. And I say my team because I, work with some agents who help bring us buyers, right? I work with a closer. There's one closer. My main closer is my dad, right? I consider him to be part of the team, right? And then I will spread the word on social media. I may text. Okay, a key thing that I've done recently is I will text or call some of our current owner finance buyers. Okay, I've been doing seller financing as a way to exit properties since 2011. My pop's been doing it since 1990. We have helped, at this point, dozens of investors through that process. So we can reach out to those investors we've helped, and we can reach out also to those families we have helped and offer them something, however that looks, to say, hey, we have another home up for grabs. This is a rare, awesome, unique opportunity to get into a home without having to go the traditional mortgage route, right? And people love it. Our buyers love it. And so and they can bring us a buyer, we pay them a referral or fee, or however we work it out, right? So that's, what I do if I'm going to help a seller through the seller finance process. And I actually take them on as a client. We sign on the dotted line, okay? So that's a key part, because as of late, okay, I have, been quite a bit more selective about what I do, okay, and who I take on as a partner, as a client, and so forth, right? Because, things change, the market shifts. Certain things that were working really, really well before may not be working so well now. So, I shift and evolved as as things change, right? So that's one key thing that I do, right? As a real estate broker, if I'm going to take on a client, okay, and they want me to help them with seller financing, okay. The other thing that I do, okay, so I mentioned when I take on a client, I'm either going to help them with seller financing, right, to sell a property, or I'm going to help them to acquire a property, right? And then the third thing, I mentioned that I'm going to take them on as a business partner or an investment partner. Okay, so let me get into the second part there. If I'm going to take on an investor who wants me to help them get into an investment property, I switched things up, okay, in 2022, okay, for a number of reasons. And if you've been tracking, seen some of my videos, seen some of my social media posts, you may have seen me talk about it or heard me talk about it, right? I now charge investor buyers up front, okay? If they want me to hit the ground running and help them find deeply discounted, okay, opportunities, a lot of them are off market, okay? That seems to be the thing that a lot of investors want, okay? Even if I help them find a turnkey property that's on the open market MLS, I'm still going to charge them up front, and I am going to have a buyer agency agreement with them, okay? This has allowed me to filter through investor buyers who may not be as serious, right? And it also allows me to filter through, investors that aren't going to be tire kickers and so forth. Because at this point, I've lost track. I know I've helped over 100 investors in one capacity or another. And so, and the cool thing about it, right? A lot of investors don't want to pay the fee up front. Okay, cool. Like the last time I had that happen was last month. Okay. I got contacted by someone on Facebook. It's an out-of-state investor. They wanted assistance getting into another investment property, right? I told them my fee. They weren't, willing to pay it. They kind of wanted to negotiate it. I wasn't willing to negotiate it at that point. At some point in the future, I may. And I said, hey, no harm, no foul. I can get you connected with another agent who I've done projects with who's really good. I don't know if, she can take you on at this time. I know she's not going to charge an upfront fee like me. You may not necessarily get the same care or time or attention or results, but hey, if you want to give this a shot, it's a trusted advisor, trusted contact of mine. So the out-of-state investor, I referred them to my colleague. Okay, cool, that works out, right? And I can keep it pushing. And I did circle back with them to see if they had any luck. I have not heard back. Okay, so, but that's a big thing. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up on this session because I don't want to get too long-winded and take up too much of your time. I appreciate you tuning in. But yeah, that's digging in a little bit deeper of the process and what I do when I actually have an agreement to take on a client. Okay, so I mentioned helping them with seller financing, right? I mentioned taking on an investor buyer. Okay, right? I talked about if they're not willing to pay the fee, no big deal. I can get them plugged in with someone else if they're open to that. And on the next video, I'm going to continue that second part because I want to cover some more things when it comes to me taking on an investor buyer. Okay, more of that process and why I charge the upfront fee, because there are quite a few things that I do as I'm vetting out deals and making sure that they have the funding straight, and then to make sure that we're on the same page about what I believe is a good opportunity for them. Okay, so again, appreciate you tuning in. Have a great day. Peace, y'all.